My name is Emma, and I'm 32 years old. I live with my husband, Ryan, and his mother, Margaret, who's 58 years old. Margaret has always been the type of person who loves being in charge. She often makes decisions without asking anyone, and most of the time, we just go along with it to keep the peace. But this time, she took things way too far. It all started last week when Margaret came up with the idea of a family trip. She said it would be a chance for us to bond and spend quality time together. At first, I thought it was a nice idea. Life had been stressful lately, and a getaway sounded like the perfect break. She even showed us brochures of a beautiful beach resort. Emma, wouldn't it be wonderful to relax by the ocean? I've already found the best deals, she said with a smile that seemed a little too eager. It sounds great, Margaret, I replied, though I felt a bit unsure. Margaret had a habit of making grand plans but leaving someone else to foot the bill. As I feared, her next sentence confirmed my suspicions. Since I've already done the research, I'll need your credit card to book everything. Don't worry, I'll handle all the details. You won't have to lift a finger. I hesitated. I'm not sure, Margaret. I'd like to know more about the costs before handing over my card. Oh, Emma, don't worry about that. It's all affordable. I promise I'll keep track of every penny, she said, waving her hand dismissively. Ryan, as usual, stayed quiet, avoiding any confrontation with his mom. I didn't want to seem difficult, so I reluctantly gave her my card. I made her promise to let me know about all the charges before booking anything. She nodded eagerly, and I hoped she would keep her word. A few days later, Margaret was unusually quiet. She didn't mention the trip or share any updates, which was strange considering how excited she'd been. When I asked her about the plans, she brushed me off. Don't worry, Emma. Everything is under control. You'll love it, she said with a quick smile before walking away. I felt uneasy, but decided to trust her. After all, it was supposed to be a family trip. What could go wrong? Little did I know, Margaret had no intention of taking us on that trip. She had a completely different plan in mind, one that would leave me shocked and betrayed. The morning of the trip, I woke up early, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. Ryan and I had packed our bags the night before, and I was looking forward to a weekend by the beach. As I walked into the kitchen, expecting to see Margaret buzzing around with last-minute preparations, I found the house eerily quiet. Margaret? I called out, but there was no response. I checked her room, and that's when I noticed something odd. Her suitcase was gone. Confused, I turned to Ryan, who had just woken up. Where's your mom? Ryan shrugged. Maybe she's running errands? She didn't tell me anything. That's when my phone buzzed. It was a notification from my credit card app. I opened it and felt my stomach drop. Multiple charges had been made at luxury hotels and expensive restaurants. The most recent one was for a first-class flight to Miami. Ryan, look at this, I said, showing him the screen. Your mom just used my card for a trip to Miami. Ryan frowned, finally looking concerned. That doesn't make sense. She said this was a family trip. I was about to respond when I noticed an envelope on the kitchen counter. It had my name on it, written in Margaret's handwriting. I tore it open and read the note inside. Emma, I decided to make this a personal trip with my friends instead. I'm sure you understand how much I need this break. Don't worry, I've already taken care of everything. Enjoy the quiet weekend. I couldn't believe it. She had taken my credit card and booked an entire vacation for herself and her friends, leaving us behind without so much as a discussion. She planned this, I said, my voice shaking with anger. She never intended for us to go on this trip. She used my card to treat herself. Ryan looked stunned but didn't say much. That's when I realized I needed to act fast. I grabbed my phone and called the credit card company. I need to cancel my card immediately, I told the representative. There are unauthorized charges, and I want to dispute them. The representative assured me the card was canceled, but it would take some time to resolve the charges. While I was relieved I stopped her from spending more, I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. Later that day, Margaret called. I answered, ready to confront her, but she started speaking before I could say a word. Emma, what's going on? My card isn't working, she snapped, her voice dripping with frustration. That's because it's my card, Margaret, and I canceled it, I said firmly. You had no right to use it for your personal trip. How dare you embarrass me like this in front of my friends, she shouted. You've ruined everything. I can't even pay for the hotel now. That's not my problem, I replied, trying to stay calm. You lied to me and used my card without permission. You brought this on yourself. Margaret hung up in a huff, but I didn't feel guilty. Instead, I felt empowered for standing up for myself. The next morning, I got a call from the hotel Margaret was staying at. They informed me she had left without paying the bill, leaving them with no choice but to report her to the authorities. I couldn't believe she had sunk so low. By the end of the week, Margaret returned home, furious and humiliated. She tried to blame me for everything, but Ryan finally stepped up. Mom, you were wrong. You can't keep taking advantage of Emma like this, he said. Margaret didn't apologize, but she kept her distance after that. I realized I couldn't change her, but I could set boundaries to protect myself. After Margaret's dramatic return, her humiliation didn't stop at the family's front door. Word spread quickly among her social circle about how she had abandoned her friends at the hotel and failed to pay her bills. One of her closest friends, Diane, called me directly. Emma, I thought you should know something, Diane began hesitantly. Margaret told us you gave her permission to use your card for the trip. She said you insisted she take some time for herself. I almost laughed at the absurdity. That's not true, Diane. She lied to me, stole my card, and went on the trip alone. I had to cancel my card to stop her from spending more. Diane sighed. That's what I thought. Well, you should know that none of us are speaking to her now. We had to scramble to cover the hotel bill she left behind, and the hotel has blacklisted her. She's ruined her own reputation. I thanked Diane for the information, feeling a strange mix of satisfaction and pity. Margaret's selfishness had finally caught up with her, but the consequences were far-reaching. Margaret's fallout didn't just affect her friendships, it caused a major divide within the family. Ryan's siblings, who had always viewed Margaret as a doting mother, were now seeing her in a different light. You let her use Emma's card like that? Ryan's sister, Laura, asked during a family dinner. What were you thinking? I didn't know she was going to do this. Ryan defended himself. I trusted her too. The tension in the room was palpable. For the first time, everyone seemed to understand what I had been dealing with all these years. Margaret tried to play the victim, but no one was buying it anymore. I just wanted a little break, Margaret said, her voice trembling. I didn't mean for it to get so out of hand. Mom, you've been taking advantage of Emma for years, Ryan said firmly. This has to stop. Margaret glared at me, but I stood my ground. You're lucky I didn't press charges for fraud, I said calmly. With the family dynamics shifting, I decided it was time to take control of my life. I sat down with Ryan and made it clear that boundaries needed to be set, not just with Margaret, but with everyone. We can't keep letting her manipulate us, I said. From now on, no more financial favors, no more guilt trips, and definitely no more credit cards. Ryan agreed, and for the first time, I felt like we were on the same team. Margaret, however, didn't take the changes well. She sulked and avoided me for weeks, but I didn't let her behavior affect me. Instead, I focused on my own goals, strengthening my marriage and building a life that didn't revolve around her drama. Months later, I received a letter in the mail. It was from Margaret. Inside was a brief note. Emma, I may have gone too far, but I hope we can move past this. Let's start fresh. Margaret. Attached was a check for the amount she had spent on the trip. It wasn't an apology, but it was a start. I decided to accept it, not because I trusted her, but because it was time to move forward. Some people never change, but I had learned an important lesson. Standing up for yourself isn't just about protecting your finances. It's about protecting your peace. A year passed, and life had returned to normal, or as normal as it could be with Margaret in the background. She had kept her distance since her failed trip, but things took a surprising turn when Ryan announced a family reunion. Emma, my mom wants to host a barbecue at her house. She says it's a chance for everyone to move on, Ryan said cautiously. I raised an eyebrow. You really think she's changed? Ryan shrugged. Honestly, I don't know. But maybe it's worth giving her a chance to prove herself. Against my better judgment, I agreed to attend. I told myself it was an opportunity to test whether Margaret had truly learned her lesson, or if she was just setting the stage for another scheme. The day of the barbecue was sunny and warm, but the atmosphere felt tense. Margaret greeted everyone with her usual charm, but I couldn't help noticing how carefully she avoided eye contact with me. As the afternoon went on, things seemed surprisingly calm, until Diane, one of Margaret's estranged friends, arrived unexpectedly. "What are you doing here?" Margaret hissed under her breath, her smile faltering. "I just wanted to say hi," Diane replied coolly, her voice dripping with sarcasm. After all, I wouldn't miss the chance to catch up with my dear friend. Sensing the tension, I moved closer to listen. Diane's next words stopped everyone in their tracks. "Margaret, are you going to tell everyone about the second trip you've been planning? Or should I?" Diane asked loudly, crossing her arms. The crowd went silent. Margaret's face turned pale. "What are you talking about?" I asked, stepping forward. Diane smirked. "She's been bragging about how she found a way to fund another luxury vacation. I thought you might want to know. She's been telling people she's getting help from family again." All eyes turned to Margaret, who stammered, "That's not true. Diane's just trying to stir up trouble." I didn't believe her for a second. "Is that why you've been acting so nice lately? Trying to get back in everyone's good graces so you can take advantage of us again?" Margaret's composure cracked. "I've done nothing wrong. I was just trying to enjoy life after everything I've been through." "Everything you've been through?" Ryan interjected, finally losing his patience. "Mom, you've been manipulating people for years. When are you going to take responsibility for your actions?" Margaret's defenses crumbled as the rest of the family began voicing their frustrations. Laura, Ryan's sister, chimed in, "Mom, we've tried to support you, but you keep taking advantage of everyone. This has to stop." For once, Margaret had no excuses. She stormed inside the house, slamming the door behind her. Just when I thought the drama was over, Diane pulled me aside. "Emma, there's something else you need to know," she said in a hushed tone. "What now?" I asked, exhausted by the day's events. Diane hesitated, then handed me a folder. Inside were copies of financial documents showing that Margaret had taken out a loan using Ryan's name and hadn't paid a dime toward it. "She bragged about this at one of our lunches before we stopped talking," Diane explained. "I thought you should know." I felt a wave of anger and disbelief. Margaret's schemes had gone beyond vacations. She was actively jeopardizing our future. Armed with the evidence, I confronted Margaret the next day. Ryan and I sat her down and laid the documents in front of her. "You took out a loan in Ryan's name? How could you do this to your own son?" I demanded. Margaret looked trapped. I needed the money. I was going to pay it back. I swear." "Do you have any idea what this could have done to our credit? To our future?" Ryan said, his voice shaking with anger. "We gave her an ultimatum. Pay back the loan immediately or face legal consequences." Margaret pleaded for forgiveness, but we stood firm. In the end, Margaret was forced to sell her own belongings to repay the loan. The family distanced themselves from her, and she finally seemed to understand the damage she had caused. As for me, I learned that standing up for myself wasn't just about protecting my finances. It was about protecting my peace of mind and the life Ryan and I were building together. Margaret's actions may have brought chaos, but they also taught me the value of boundaries and resilience. Sometimes, the best way to deal with a toxic relationship is to face it head-on and never back down.